Hello and welcome to Season 3, Episode 9 of The Dive. Good numbers there. You're holding up, Phreak. I'm joined by Phreak as well as Kobe. So last week before we get into the playoffs, boys.
It is definitely exciting times to be in. First order of business, though, we are going to change the dive back to our old format where we used to have Jet. He's moved on to the balance team.
Yep.
And we tried to do, interviewing guests and bringing pro players on. But it really did not just have the same feel of the old dive. And we're going to go back to more consistent hosts. Phreak will be one, especially for patch days, because Phreak does a lot
such as today.
Early patch research. We also are going to have Mark Z and fairly sparingly Deficio whenever we can get him.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's going to be mostly rotating between Phreak and Mark. I think having a lot of the pros on actually was pretty fun, and they had a lot to offer as far as that goes. But definitely the fans did seem to want the return more to the more consistency, more freedom to talk, honestly about your opinions on the teams, as that can sometimes be hard for players to give up what their strategies are or their true opinions on teams, if that could give their opponents an advantage. So we're going to be going back to this. So if you weren't enjoying the other format, check us out again now. But
they already have by listening to you.
That's true. Phreak was just on The Simpsons.
That's true.
And
that was pretty hype.
I watched it twice. I watched it when I got home by myself, and then I went to a friend's house and they're like, "Hey, have you watched it?" And I'm like, "Yep." They're like, "Okay, cool. We're gonna watch it." I'm like, okay, and watched it again.
I hate watching stuff more than one time, by the way.
I'm not much of a rewatcher of anything, movies included.
There's some things I actually will rewatch. I started rewatching Breaking Bad recently, and it's been so long since I watched it the first time. I forget all the plot points, other than he becomes a meth dealer, etc., and they don't die until the end. Spoiler alert: people die at the end. But I'm midway through season 2, and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot how this happened and how they get away. I know they get away, but I don't remember how, and so there's still the intrigue. I've seen several movies. I used to have the first half of Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back memorized with how many times I've watched it. Not anymore, but I still have the first 5 minutes or so. I'll prove it some other time. There's not a lot of things I rewatch, but there's some.
Did you guys watch the episode?
Yeah, I did.
One?
I haven't watched it.
Okay, so you haven't watched it. What did you think about the actual episode?
I actually liked it. I thought they did a really good job of making jokes that people who are in esports get. Like when Homer spends a full minute saying wait, they're gonna pay you to play a video game?
Real money?
Wait, real money?
How much?
In the video game? How much? $1,000? Wait, they pay you? And then the scene ends, they get to a new scene $1,000. It's already been established. This is yes, every one of us had that conversation. It's that was exactly on point.
Especially a lot of us who have been doing it for so long. You even played Warcraft 3 professionally. You played World of Warcraft professionally. We've been playing these games and stuff even back when the payments that you're getting are mouse, keyboard. You can, if you win first place, then you get a processor. Or something.
Yep, I have one CPUs for tournaments before.
But then you finally explained to your parents. One of the big breaking point for me was when Riot announced that they were going to start the LCS way back in 2013. And I was at an engineering position where I was a group lead, and I had been working at this company for 2 years. And my dad was finally all happy because he had been trying to push me out of the house. He was like, "When are you gonna get a job? When are you gonna get a job? You graduated." And he was like, "All right, this one's set, right? I can worry about the next kid." And then I was like, I hate it. I'm going to quit and go down to Southern California and work for this video game company. And he got all pissed all over again. But then, as it's become more established, that's a real route.
For me, it was more, so my parents, I think, accepted it more early on once they understood, you could actually, they're actually paying for you to travel and paying for you to go to these events and all these things. Then they started to get it. Before I started actually traveling for events, it's you are wasting your life. What are you doing? You're never going to make money, blah, blah. But even after I'd been traveling and doing these things for years, I had that same Homer Simpson conversation 1,000 times with family and stuff. They're oh, so you're doing some video game things. You're making them, right? No, I'm playing them. That's not a job. No. I do tournaments. I get money for playing the tournaments. For video games, But how do you afford to do that? Well, they pay me for the video games. But aren't the flights expensive?
You ever watch football on TV?
They pay for the flights. For the video game.
My favorite one is always the follow-up, and they're like, "Oh, but where does this money come from?" And they're like, "Well, people watch us playing the video games. They're like, what? They watch you playing games?
Like they sit on the couch with you?
And they were like,
have you watched basketball?
Yeah,
have you watched
exactly.
baseball? Have you
That's
watched
always the
football? It's like,
response.
cool, now it's just this.
Yeah.
And that's usually the shortcut for me is just like, do you watch real sports? Yeah. Conventional sports, whatever. Like,
yeah, I do think that was super cool that, you got to do that on a TV show that all of us actually also grew up watching.
Yeah.
Just kind of a little bit broader of a hit.
The show has about as many seasons as I have years old. It's been around for quite a while. Yeah, it was just really cool. Like, the option got brought up to me, like in an email. And I was like, hey, by the way, we're doing this thing. I'm like, of course, yes. What? And found a day I was free. I like drove over on a Tuesday. Like, actually been a lot once before because our executive producer on LCS, Dave Stewart, used to work over at Fox Sports. It's like the same giant, 17-acre lot or whatever. I took more left turns than the other time. And yeah, it's like it's like every episode of Entourage you've ever seen, where it's just like people are walking down through the studio and whatnot. And you're just like, yep, this is exactly what I saw on TV with how studios look like.
I live right next to the Fox studio.
Oh, really? That's cool.
A block away.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
I like all the little tidbits we get in Phreak stories. He's like, no, I took way more left turns this time than last
the
time.
most useless detail.
Delve into the mind of the Phreak.
I got lost on the way out because like you get there and there's like a gate in the front and they're like, okay, who are you here for? Like, he give them the name and he comes over in a golf cart and they bring you over and it's like, all right, you're done. Bye. And I'm like, I'm in a maze, dude. Like, are you?
How many left turns was
Yeah.
there?
Are you filming me? Like, am I in Maze Runner Part 4? Like, what's going on? I got out eventually. Tough. Being.
Hey, he made it.
Spoiler! I didn't know if you got out yet.
Again, the most useless details.
He made it here to the dive to talk about League of Legends
around.
and the LCS, and we should probably move on to that.
Yeah.
I think one of the hottest topics, of course, now that 100 Thieves are officially out of playoffs, it's basically the end of spring for them. And they've already even started coming out where PrOlly had this tweet. I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on. I think you guys all saw it, right? It's the tweet where he basically is taking a lot of the blame. I think this is cool for coaches to do. It is more standard for coaches to try and take the flame and the heat for the teams after failures like that. But, a lot of it does make sense too. He says, this split is on me. I had a good roster to work with and couldn't create a winning team. Sorry to all the fans for letting you guys down, and we will start prepping for summer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Basically, I think it's a very common coach thing, right? Your players are getting flamed,
but
players are
admirable.
getting
Like,
heat.
it's something you should. That's the reason that it's common.
Yeah. I didn't mean it as a negative. Like, it is a positive, certainly. Like, to take the heat off of your players, right? And I think this is a classy move from him. Whether or not it is his fault, we don't know, right? We're not inside the team. I do think at a certain point, though, the buck does kind of have to stop with the coach, right? Whether your players didn't want to play what you played or they didn't work together in the way that you were trying to get them to work together, at some point it does become your responsibility. Well, then you should have been able to motivate them to work better together. You should have been able to establish that trust in you so they picked what you wanted them to pick. You should have been able to do those things, and that didn't happen. So whether or not, like, it really doesn't matter whose fault it is. The ultimate responsibility is always going to lie with the coach.
Yeah. And Forgiven, I remember, replied to the tweet and was like, best coach ever had. Like, we didn't see eye to eye all the time. I'm paraphrasing slightly, but like, best coach. They did world semis together. So yeah, and I think PrOlly is a good coach. You're right. Something clearly happened. Like, something went wrong, and he's got to learn from it. Like, PrOlly's never had an insane lineup who underperformed so badly. Like, it's a new experience for him. He clearly knows how to coach teams. He clearly is good at his job, but maybe not in this facet of it.
Honestly, I'd say this is a new experience for everyone. Fans of the team, other teams in the league. Yeah. For a team like this, that was so heavily built up with a lot of offseason moves. I mean, the organization spent a lot of money trying to make sure that this was going to be a strong contender, and they fell so incredibly flat. That the interesting thing about this tweet and the topic is trying to figure out the mystery of actually what happened the split.
It's really crazy because, as you say, I mean, this is a world's team that got bang, right? And you're like, okay, well, that's certainly got to be a big upgrade over Cody's son, who a lot of people were criticizing very heavily.
Yeah, and Riccara, who was playing more recently and was definitely not LCS caliber.
Yep. So, I mean, that was, this huge change. And you think, okay, that's going to be a massive upgrade. They obviously picked him up for a reason. You're expecting him to.
Some of it being a resident because they picked up another import, but he's like comparable-ish to Ryu, maybe a bit worse to be fair, but like not a bad player, certainly an LCS caliber player.
And you would think that with tryouts and everything, they would have had confidence in him. Afro and them have played a lot together. So this has certainly looked like these were upgrades on paper, and the team got massively worse. And it is interesting because it's not just with 100 Thieves, but I feel like in general across Europe and North America, and you guys can kind of maybe sanity test this for me, this is the least success Korean imports have ever had in our leagues. It feels like when I'm looking at a lot of the teams, I feel like over the last couple of years, when you have those Korean imports coming into different leagues, they're absolutely dominating. They're at the top of the table. We see Gorilla missing playoffs in the LEC. We see Clutch with all these Koreans, missing maybe missing playoffs, lower end of the
seems really
here.
Likely.
Bang, obviously, not having a good time, joining a team that was already in Worlds. I'm trying to think. God, who was the G2 jungler? Trick got replaced. He in another league after a couple of weeks, and his team was in last. There's a whole bunch of examples, but it was just like this was happening everywhere, and it's kind of interesting. Feels like the first time it's been so extreme.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it comes off the back of the year of Worlds where Korea did the worst ever.
Yeah.
And a lot of the older players in the LCK even are not finding success in the LCK this season, right? We have all these newer, more rookie teams coming up. Damwon Gaming, Griffin, of course, right? The number one prime example of this. And times are changing, right? Plus, feels like there are more Korean imports being sent out, and everyone is an individual, right? If you look at just Core JJ this year, and we're like, oh my God, we imported a previous world champion, and he's probably the MVP of our league, right?
Yep.
And then we're like, well, we imported another previous world champion, and he's on the last place team. and they were a previous world's contenders.
Yeah,
so
they fought each other in world finals, and like Bang was one of the good ones. It was like,
and you're
was trying.
There's just League of Legends is such a team-based game, and especially right now, so much of it is about not having to spend time talking to your teammates to communicate. All right, on this next minion wave, we need you to do this, you to do that, you to do that to set up for this play. You need to have people with a similar understanding of how to approach the game at different points so that everyone can act so quickly, right?
I even think, for me, a lot of times where I feel like it's even maybe more important is in team fights when people are calling for an engage or even calling for who's going to be the target and all these sorts of things. Like every second that you have to actually talk about that is a second lost in an opportunity, because there's often these tiny windows, especially if you are playing an engaged champion, where it's like, okay, they stepped that much far forward, right? They stepped a little bit too far forward. You had to instantly engage, and everyone had to instantly be on the same page. And if you're not, that can be really rough.
Yeah, some examples, of course, the Bang play that Hai analyzed on the analyst desk, where he steps up, and there can be a situation where it works out if the entire team sees someone use a spell and they all react the same way. Alistar engages, Ezreal steps up,
like
stuff like that.
schedule.
Or there's also other examples, like Wild Turtle was outspoken about his one where everyone looked at the play and they're like, oh my God, on Yasuo, and he runs straight down mid and feeds, and everyone's like, ha, it's Wild Turtle, huh? Wild Turtle does super aggressive things. And he's like, well, you see, similar situation, if the entire team is moving up and they engage at this moment, then we actually get the wombo combo. This happens, and they're like these chain reactions that you have to have the same instincts to be able to pull off.
Yeah, and excellent communication. But either way, definitely a really disappointing split 400 Thieves. I'm really interested to see if things are going to change going into summer. Are they going to try to pick up another mid laner? Are they going to stay with Soligo? Are they going to go back to Huhi? Like, what is actually going to happen? Because certainly it feels like there needs to be a big shift with the team to get them back to their winning ways. And, that does kind of come back to the PrOlly thing again, where it's like if he couldn't get, these players to work together and they can't replace the players because everyone's signed to contracts, do they try to replace the coach? Like, it'll be interesting to see what this team actually does.
Yeah. For me, looking at replacing a coach, especially a coach like PrOlly, I'm like, all right, it's pretty hard to replace players. Everyone's like, well, what do 100 Thieves do? Like, what kind of trades could they make? It's impossible to replace coaches. Actually, it's so hard to find coaches that are going to have, any sort of background or respect from the players. And you kind of have to build that up. The stories like we talked about, I think last episode, about Zix being a Redditor and sending all this information and stuff in. Like, unless you're going to do that route and actually grassroots find just some super enthusiastic league analysts, how do you even vet that sort of stuff? It becomes very difficult. And I think that one of the biggest areas for improvement for organizations across the board is going to be finding talent and scouting talent, not only players, but also staff.
For what it's worth, there's like a little bit more space to spot staff now, just because there's 2 coaches on stage. So now instead of 10 coaches, there's like almost 20 in the LCS.
Wow, we doubled.
Okay. Well, I've seen McScrag on there with Clutch, and I've seen Baguette up there with Optics. So maybe at least now we know like someone is there to like maybe ask like, hey, Optic, can we buy your secondary coach from you? And I don't know, right? But like at least there's like a few more names out there. Plus the academy teams usually have their own coaches as well. It's all just ways to get reps, right? There's about 30 coaches now getting reps every week in NA and more around the world as well. And like hopefully people start figuring out who is good and which teams have good everything, good drafts and good comps, whatnot. And you learn over time.
Yeah,
it takes a while.
And I still do think that this roster can be successful, 400 Thieves. So I am excited to see if they can at least, even if they're not changing anything, kind of reestablish that trust, because it does feel like the team looked very broken in the second half of the split, right? Things weren't always going well for them in the first half of the split, but it felt like they were still trying their hardest and working together. And it did feel in the later half of the split like there was a lot of games where they weren't communicating, and you watch them, it just looks like they're just kind of waiting to lose. And I think that spoke of a very broken team. And that's something where maybe you do need those sports psychologists, maybe you do need those mental coaches who can come in and try to reset the team and reset the mental and get people working back on the same page again and committing to kind of trusting each other. Because if you don't trust each other's calls, if you don't work together, you can't succeed in this league.
It's pretty interesting, actually, because we were just watching Double Lift's interview that he did last weekend with Fafsy, and he starts talking about 10 death power spike, and he's making fun of it, right? His Vayne game where he's like, every time you die, I feel like you should play more aggressively. And theoretically, it can make sense. You can see where he's coming from, Phreak. If your team is getting further and further behind, your chances of winning the game are going to get less and less. So you should up your threshold of taking risks. However, what Azale is alluding to here with 100 Thieves, they lose more and more and more. And a lot of people got really frustrated with seeing them just not take that stand or not make more aggressive plays at any point in the game. There has to be some sort of checkpoint where you lose this much stuff and you're like, oh my goodness, we're down to 5% chance to win. We got to go.
Yeah.
Like you got to make some sort of stand. And that's kind of can lend towards the mentality.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there was a game where they lost the Nexus with 0 people dead. Like the other team just like walks past them and hits Nexus, and people are like, I'm low, I got to go to the fountain and heal. And it's like, you just lose the game. But like that was the mindset. Like there were very crystallized examples of them really not understanding, like at a certain point, just fight someone. And the one example of Bane stepping up, he goes to fight someone, but the rest of the team's not there to headbutt the Lissandra away, and you're like, okay, well, guess I'm not going to step up next time. And you just get in this vicious cycle of like nothing working. And yeah, it's crazy, but that kind of stuff happens.
Yeah. Are you guys excited for patch 9.6 to hit? I know that Phreak, you like to do the Phreak show. You've always done patch rundowns and stuff.
That's true.
I saw a couple of things in here that I thought were pretty decent. Of course, the Urgot being this is almost a rework to me again.
Yeah, pretty much.
It is
with the way that you're changing the W to make it be a permanent toggle for later.
Yep.
I think like that might be the biggest thing. Yep. There are a decent amount of other changes, but they all seem fairly simple to me.
Yeah. The ones that stand out for me are Kale is going to be enabled for week 9 of LCS. There's going to be a week off for LEC. They'll start playoffs around the same time as us, but I assume that'll have Kale enabled as well. 9.6 overall is going to be the playoff patch for both those regions. This weekend for LCS is going to be 9.5, but with Kale now enabled. I think Kale is absurdly strong. So she's like really high, like 54-55% win rate, top lane and high elo. I watched Ellis's patch rundown last night, and he was saying that it's absurd that she's getting nerfed because she literally can't lane in high elo. Her win rate's actually higher in Master Plus than it is in Plat Plus. Like, not to say that Ellis is dumb, and I think he's a very smart guy, but like she's clearly successful even in Master Plus. So like clearly this champion is good. I expect to see Kayle. Attack damage Kayle seems to be the better Kayle as far as I can tell. Go Klepto, Potion of Skill gets your evolves sooner, which is a really big deal. So now 15 is the true damage waves. Like this champion is very, very good. Yes, the laning phase is abysmally bad. But if tanks are getting played more or weak lane is getting played more, go play Kayle against them. Try to survive, camp if you need to, but I think she's really, really powerful and should be played around. Especially red side when you can guarantee counterpick. Urgot, to your point, I think is also a really big deal. Jace nerfs matter a lot. More tanks showing up. A lot of good things this patch.
Yeah, this is kind of the reason why as soon as I heard what their design goal for Kayle was, I was not happy.
Fair.
Because it's a game warping design. And I personally don't really like it when most of my game becomes about this one because someone picked this one champion, either on my team or the enemy team. You're talking about, you should go to the Kayle lane. And I'm like, well, now, I had this whole plan where I was going to go off and do my whatever jungler plan that I wanted to do.
Adventure.
But
Azale's
a one-trick Kayle player, and he just wants to pick every single game. So now I got to go babysit him.
Yeah. And in some cases, you actually can't win. You can't even win the 2v2 at all, right? Like I had a game last night where I was playing jungle, I was playing Vi, and their top lane, so my top laner picks Kayle. Their top laner is a Singed one trick playing Ghost Ignite, and then their jungler is playing Xin Zhao, right? We are never going to win that 2v2. And so then what happens is there's no way that Kayle can actually fight against the push at all against Singed. So now the entire game, there's a Singed and a Xin sitting in my top side jungle, and they're farming both of these, both sides of the jungle essentially, right? Like it makes it into a situation where not only was I having to try to protect him from dives, but there's nothing that I can even farm up there. So I'm just having to sit up top and try to defend him every time these waves are coming in with none of my camps even up to get. So it was just I am fully opted into protecting this man because I'm screwed because he can't play early games. So now I'm just well, I sure hope you can carry my ass when you hit 16 because I'm not going to do anything this game. And that can be tough. I do think that Kayle's win rate has been rising. When I had seen it on Analytics, it was something like 53 or whatever. It is definitely going up as people, I think, are getting better at surviving early game and playing around that and more frequently going even. I still am of the opinion that we're not going to see it in pro, though, because I do think that the early game is too weak, and teams can get such big advantages when they know how to play around that effectively. Such as this, right, where it's you lose full control of your top side. Kayle is never going to be able to roam into the jungle pre-6 and have that 2v2 fight with you, right? And I do think that pro teams, and I may be wrong about this, but this is certainly my assumption, is that pro teams are going to be able to get too much off the map for the Kayle to be that effective later on, right? So hard to fight those dragons, so hard to actually come down to the Rift Herald. I do think that you can have more effectiveness early if you go the AP and CDR builds because your heals and your ultimate are more powerful, but then you are sacrificing some of the late game. So maybe there's kind of a middle ground where people do just go these AP builds and try to kind of hang on and help the team. But as of now, I still feel there are answers for it late, and it is too weak in the early levels to really be seen. But I think in solo queue, I'm seeing more and more that it is just a really good pick because teams are not clean enough at closing out games. You can actually be at a significant deficit, especially with the AD builds, and be holding super minion waves forever. That's just not an issue. If you're 16, you could actually clear triple inhib waves no problem. So it's pretty insane when you get to late, but we'll see. There's also a lot of other pro-specific changes that are coming out. Minion Dematerializer as well as Overheal, both specifically nerfed or it's changed, whatever you want to say, because of their use in pro. Minion Dematerializer is going from 6 charges to 3, but they're increasing the bonus damage to minions by a bit. So they're hoping that there's still some niche where you want to use it. I don't think people care at all about the bonus damage to minions for this.
It's about pushing to roam.
Yeah,
it's pushing to roam. So I think it's completely gone from pro.
They do buff the cooldown by 1 minute so that it is available, for maybe a slightly earlier wave and whatnot. So there is some level of value there. I'm going to, again, plug Ellis's patch rundown because I watched it. And he said this was actually, this would single-handedly bring Singed back as a top laner. I think his idea being that you can just you just need the lane pressure that early that now I can actually dematerialize or and things like that. So maybe that cooldown change really is a big deal. I'm not sure. It does allow you to like use 3 materializers on just cannons and have the like higher damage amp on that minion type specifically than you would otherwise have, which like maybe can matter towards the mid late game. I'm not really sure. I do think though that it's good. This is another also to me a thing that slightly ticks down tank supports. That they got love tap last patch with the relic shield healing getting overall worse. Tank supports are the only supports running dematerializers. So now you have less bot lane pressure if you're running,
harder to roam
Braum instead of Zyra or whatever. So it's another love tap. Like these are things that aren't going to make pros change until you're like, oh, you're right. We should be playing range supports now. But all these things have happened already. So I think this is just like balancing the rune for pro. And at some point people will like snap and realize at some point when bot lane meta should change around and it will change when tanks are like almost non-viable at that point, just because everything's such a small change that it's not going to create different decisions yet.
Yeah, I noticed they were trying to do a couple bottom lane changes here with the Xayah buff and Caitlyn buff.
Yeah,
for me the Caitlyn one, it's not 50 more damage on her ultimate for level 1 is not going to be that big a deal. And even 50 at max rank, I don't think this is bringing her back. I've talked to a couple of the pro marksman players to find like, a couple patches ago to find out, what the other picks are going to be. And I was like, oh, what about Caitlyn though? Maybe that. And as soon as I got to that point, they're like, stop.
Yeah. Well, I remember last time Sven said Caitlyn wasn't viable. That was right before everyone realized that she was the best bot laner at Worlds. So like, I will never ever trust pros when they just say point blank X champion is or isn't good. Because a lot of times I'll look at these champions that get changed and I'll go to, I'm going to plug lolvv.com, is a solo queue scraper for only pros.
Phreak's just selling out hard this episode. True. Wait a second.
Well, so I like to plug resources that are really good. So lolvv, it scrapes solo queue for only pros, and I'll be like, all right, so who's been playing like new updated Vi? And it's like only Meteos and no one else all patched, and be like, okay, no one's even bothering to look. And I'll like look at Kale or a Kali rework or like, hey, they buffed, Sejuani or Ornn or someone and be like, no one's even trying. It's like, okay, well, you actually don't know if Caitlyn's good or not because you're not even playing the champion at all. And that stuff I think does happen. And sure, time is limited, but to the point about like people saying things are not viable, it's like, you haven't played the champion in 2 months. You actually have no idea. I feel like
unless they're grinding it in scrims, to be fair. So we should give that caveat. But yeah, to your point, this was 2017 Worlds, I believe.
Yeah, our Defensor Meta Worlds.
We talked to Zen and Mithy, and they both said no. I think it was actually Mithy that said it wasn't Sven.
Okay.
So to
be more clear.
Yeah, they booted him. So
yeah, you're right. I mean, and now
he was saying Caitlyn doesn't work at all. It's absolute trash. Doesn't work. And then the Chinese teams immediately brought it out and played all early game. Caitlyn Jace took every tower on the map and slammed everyone.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, guess it does work. But I mean, when people are playing that style of game where a lot of games are going late, that's why we're seeing things like Jinx and all these and Vayne and whatnot popping up a lot. I do think Caitlyn struggles to match their power in the later stages of the game. And one of the things I have experienced, I used to play a ton of Caitlyn when I played bot because I play Phil. But now I feel like when I play against Caitlyn and when I have played against Caitlyn, I just feel like there's so much lifesteal and healing and sustain in the game now that I don't feel like I can push people out of lane consistently anymore on Caitlyn, where I used to feel like I could. And maybe that's just actually like in my head. But I mean, when I play Vayne now, I go like biscuits and, you go like overheal and you have fleet footwork and you're going legend bloodline and I'm starting a Doran shield. And it's like, well, yeah, you keep autoing me, but who cares?
I feel like you'll start to care if we also see the shift to range supports coming back. A Caitlyn Zyra lane is always
a
Caitlyn Zyra lane.
Yep.
You get rooted, you get trapped, you get headshot. Like you're gonna feel that one.
Yeah, I might care at that point for sure. But we'll see if that does come around.
As far as the actual change, though, I just think there's nothing surprising here. Sometimes you look at a change and you're like, well, maybe there's this other angle we're not looking at, but it's a flat, tiny.
It's just generic ultimate power.
The Xayah one though, Xayah's already played, and this is a big attack speed boost. So boom, she's much stronger.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, Xayah was one of the lowest win rate AD carries. We see some Rakan already. I don't know the answer to this question, but if Xayah Rakan can win the 2-on-2 against Kalista, who's right now the highest presence bot laner, if that 2-on-2 is winnable, this is another highest presence bot lane in League of Legends because everyone's playing Kalista to try to bully out things, and it's like, well, we win the 2-on-2. Okay, well, we just hard stomp Kalista. Or we checkmate a Kalista pick already, and we scale.
My favorite nerf is this Zoe one, because one of the biggest problems with Zoe to me is that there was so little cost to her mid-game throwing out bubbles, looking for poke all the time. And it's just eventually she finds someone or finds one of your teammates, and everyone like flames that teammate, but is always throwing out bubbles every few seconds here.
Yeah.
So they nerfed the cooldown. I think that at least there's going to be some windows to work around.
Yeah, that'll feel better. I'm also really interested to see what the tier changes are going to bring for Ezreal. He can only buy 1 tier item now. So, and that has been the build for Ezreal for so long in Pro now. It's always been double tier. I wonder if that just removes Ezreal from pro play, or if people are going to be willing to still kind of take that hit in the early game and play without double tier in the late game, because Seraphs does give you so much safety. It allows them to poke essentially forever when you have 2 tiers. You have so much mana. I'm not fully sure how much of a nerf this is going to be for him, but it certainly feels like it will be a pretty big one, and it's basically just a targeted change, right? This is an Ezreal nerf essentially. No one else does this. So,
I mean, you don't have to have a giant screen that's like Ezreal nerf comes through. We're like, wait a second, this is the only champion that was building 2 tiers. Figured it out.
Yep.
Ezreal is being attacked.
It's also a nerf to tilters who buy 6 tiers when they think they lost the game. They can only buy 1. You're like forced to try harder, because like tier 5 mana crystals is not nearly as tight thing as 6 tier.
You're all of a sudden forced to try harder.
Well, I mean, if you can't buy 6 tiers,
you're inspired to go for the victory.
Yeah, I mean, you're like, well, I guess I'll just buy an Infinity. It's like, cool, it's a real item. Let's go. Like, let's play League of Legends. I don't know. It's like the most random thing, but like, that's the only other time you see multiple tiers is when people buy 6 of them. So it's like the other thing that flags up in my head.
If there's one thing I know, is that the tilters will always find a way.
That's true.
They'll just come up with something else.
You're right.
Just buy an Ohm Wrecker.
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't go over the Jace nerf though. That's another
that's a big
super good one. This is actually impact buff.
It's a liquid buff specifically.
Yeah,
toxic.
Everybody across the world was making really good use of this early pressure from Jace.
Yep.
But Team Liquid was getting solo killed on it.
Yeah.
Jokes aside, though, I think it definitely was needed. You know, Jace, he was always going to get turret plate money and all this extra lane power, turning, like they say in the patch notes, even theoretically it makes sense, as he's basically ranged most of the time anyway. So
yeah, I think that plus some of the tank buffs is pretty relevant as well. Shen got buffed. Nautilus got buffed.
Small Ornn buffs,
yeah. Like the Shen buff actually seems pretty relevant to me. So it's increasing the on-hit damage of your Q at different level breakpoints. So the level breakpoints are 1, 4, 7, 10, right? And it goes up and up every 3 levels. But it goes from 5 at level 1 to 10. So it's like 5 more damage on hit at level 1. It's 6 more damage on hit at level 4, and it goes up from there every time. But that's actually pretty, I think, significant in early trading, where you are like, when you get the pull through, you're getting increased attack speed and you're getting 3 quick hits. So it's like 15 damage essentially extra on that. And I do think that's fairly relevant for your early game trading. Even if this is just something like where we're seeing more Shen support, because that's where we have been seeing it more. But I do think with some more lane bullies getting taken out, maybe there's some opportunities, but Shen still does have some pretty bad matchups top lane.
Yep.
Yeah. And it could be good for, like, the first thing I thought of is I always loved playing jungle Shen.
Me too.
The meta is so much faster now, though. The game is just faster and more demanding of early jungle action. So I don't think it will bring back jungle Shen, because there was just too many other nerfs to it. But this would be the exact type of change. On hit damage, you're almost always autoing when you're clearing camp. So jungle Shen gets a lot of value out of this, because he's constantly auto attacking from camp to camp, trying to farm up to the level 6. So I might give it a game try.
Okay.
In a normal or something with friends, but I'll probably just be doing Vi and Hecarim, because Hecarim also got a nice little baby buff again.
Yep. One thing to point out is at the end of 2017, do you remember the previous Shen nerfs that it was Q damage down?
Yep.
This is most of that power back. It went from 15 to 40 down to 5 to 30, and now it's back up to 10 to 40. So like the early game is slightly weaker, but the late game is the same. So it's mostly a revert of that nerf. And that was the most recent nerf of the champion. Yeah. Like all the other changes have happened by that point. And he was like #1 tank back then. So this is basically almost the same champion now.
Yeah, but the early game to me is the most important, because that's where
Sure, of course. Yeah, I mean, 5 damage matters more at level 1 than it does 18. Of course it does. I mean, totally agree with you on this one. But it does bring some of that back. So it might help him less under turret, which sometimes was like he had slightly too little damage to last at caster minions, and
that was actually one of the most frustrating things with that change was because in all of his bad matchups, where generally range matchups were really, really hard. And then you had to actually try to self-prep every ranged minion, which just means, no, you can't do that. You're just going to get killed while you're doing that.
By Jace
so you just have to give them all up. So that's actually pretty nice as far as feels. The last change I'm kind of interested in, and I don't know if this is going to happen, but when I saw the Hecarim change, so this is more for like a bruiser Hecarim, and like I played after you had talked about the go fast Hecarim, I'd been playing some in some of my low elo flex games. That is fun with Moby's Ghostblade Predator just one shotting people. But when I see of like a long extended trade for Hecarim Bruiser top, that makes me feel like more like going like Triforce Sterix. These sorts of builds could be good if you can do extended fights, because every time you're getting an additional stack of your Q, it's increasing. It deals 10 additional % of damage. So like in long extended trades, that could be pretty powerful, and that makes me feel like, hey, that's more of a top lane thing than a jungle thing.
I know that they did say that that's what their intent is for this, but it's also just going to buff your clear.
Yeah.
When you're queuing through monster camps, like, so it's a generic Hecarim buff. I am kind of sad that I feel top lane Hecarim is better than jungle Hecarim. And top lane Hecarim is always a bruiser build. I keep on checking up on highest rated Hecarims across the world, Korea, North America, and Europe mainly. And every time I click on like the top 5 of them and I go to the account, and I'm like, oh, let's see what this guy's doing. What's his jungle clear start or whatever? And it's teleport. He's a top laner. And then I go to the next one. It's another teleport. Like, it's a top laner. So I do think right now Hecarim, and especially with this, is going to be a super viable top lane counter pick.
Aatrox is still in there, right? That was used against Aatrox.
Yeah, that was a big Licorice thing, right?
So. Yeah, Licorice is going to be happy, but I think that more top laners should be picking up this champion.
Yep.
I probably shouldn't promote it to them though, because I want
you want to play it yourself.
Jungle,
you don't want to get the
and I want to do it
there.
And I want to do it in the jungle.
It's too late. He's broken now. Let the world know.
But yeah, I do think he's in a pretty strong place. So we'll probably see some. I think even in playoffs.
Yeah. Oh, I was gonna say solo queue wise, it's like 10-1. He's more popular in the jungle, but his winner is higher top lane as far as
that's why
data. So
when because I only look at the very top rated.
And the ones who were actually in Master and made it there were probably playing a strong champion, aka top lane Hecarim. But yeah, people are still playing him as a jungler overall. So for your average player, this is a jungler. But yeah.
And I feel like if we're gonna see Jinx and champions like that.
Oh yeah,
that is it. Hecarim's great into that, right? Like Hecarim has that backline access for free. So
chompers don't stop your ultimate. You're gonna hit me with
stuff.
It's gonna be bad.
You don't get taken from 100 to 0 on your way in,
which Jinx doesn't do that to you.
Well, that's why you gotta go bruiser.
Yeah,
but you gotta dodge stuff.
Yeah,
you have the most. That's the thing with this champion. Also, like you get so much move speed. Like I do feel more pressure to dodge everything. So if I don't dodge something, they're like, "What are you
free, dude?
You have 500 move speed. How do you not dodge that Q?" And I'm like,
you can walk out of Shockwave. Like, just do it.
The way I'm playing Hecarim jungle, though, the additional stack per rampage is not doing anything for me because I'm just running it 1,000 miles an hour, one-shotting their AD carry, and then running away.
It's when you're doing Krugs. You'll do Krugs 1 second faster.
Right. With my like 1,000 HP, but 500 AD, one-shotting you, and then I'm dead.
In there. Beautiful.
All
right, sweet.
All right, he's in.
Well, that's what we care about for the patch 9.6. Now to talk about LCS, Team Liquid versus TSM. That's the marquee matchup coming up this weekend. It is on Sunday. This match is only going to really matter for standings if Cloud9 lose, because then TSM could be fighting for a bye still. But that being said, TSM was the only team to beat TL in the first half of the split. They're the only team to potentially be able to even, 2-0 them. And that would maybe say a lot about the relative strength of these two teams going into playoffs. As we've seen some interviews, I believe it was Niski one talking about, hey, maybe TSM's even stronger. A lot of players have been kind of talking about TSM and how good they've been doing in scrims.
I think the thing that matters most for this game, this is the most exciting game for me that before best of 5 start. Like before playoffs, this, of course, is going to be our last marquee matchup. It's super exciting because there is this big debate. Everyone is pretty polarized on one side or the other, whether TSM is actually scaling up so much better in the second half. Because, what is it, out of their last 9 games now? They've only dropped 1, or is it out of 10? It's out of 9, right?
Yeah, I think that they're 9-1 in the last 10 now. It is.
Yeah, And not all those wins,
and that was a C9 loss.
Yeah, not all those wins were super clean. So some people, point to that, but a decent amount of them were very decisive over very good teams as well. And of course, in the beginning of the season, I was one of the biggest ones that was pointing out, TSM have shown pretty high highs in a lot of their plays. I like the style that they're going for. They're fully committing to a lot of plays early. They're hard engaging. They're not hesitating. They're roaming around, but they were making a lot of errors, a lot of 2v2 errors, a lot of skirmish errors, sometimes in the mid game, lane assignment errors. And, they weren't coordinated when they're pushing at the same time for multiple lanes. But I want to get hyped, and I am going to get hyped because I do see in the games where they have not had those errors, they look extremely dominant. And whenever there's a team like Team Liquid that holds this death grip on the top of the standings, you're always looking for the way in and the way to break them down. And I think that if TSM 2-0s them for the regular split, this makes playoffs like just an inferno. It's so much more exciting.
I think TSM is super interesting. I have a lot of thoughts about TSM. So one is, the 2 on Team Liquid would be cool. What's weird is, because we were listening to this Doublelift interview that was mentioned earlier, and he said that in the FlyQuest game, Team Liquid lost because they were just trying stuff out. They're already locked first. Like, they didn't run a very good comp and whatnot. And I'm afraid that, like, the second TSM win, even if they do win, is a little bit fraudulent because the rest of the TL game is like, well, we're just trying stuff out. We're not trying to win. We're trying to practice, which is their prerogative. Of course, right? They're already locked first. Why shouldn't they try stuff out on stage? So, like, any loss that TL gets, like, it is not a full loss. I just think that's true, right? Like, I don't think you're like, at 2-0, they're the favorites in the finals now. TSM, it's weird because I don't feel like any one of their players are playing to an MVP caliber right now, but I think they can still win the split. Like, even though there's like, a Acadian Broken Blade or someone's not on the same page, and like, Sven's fine but not the best, and Bjergsen's really good but maybe not the best right now. Like, none of those guys are like, it's Bjergsen 1v9 or it's Doublelift popping off every game or whatever it is. Just like, they're all pretty good, but they're maybe the best team in NA.
And I think that a lot of that also comes back to, because you look at these games, there's always a game where one player on the team made a big mistake, right? So you can always point back to that and be like, what about that time though? So it is interesting, and it makes it harder to predict with full confidence.
Yeah. So. And I think the other asterisk there is kind of game time, right? They were, I know, a week or two ago, I haven't actually checked the most updated stats, but they were the slowest team in the league. And, and that was when they were talking about, we're the early game team, we're the aggressive team. And it's like, well, the numbers aren't really backing you up here. They're not able to necessarily close out those games, even if they are being aggressive early, because they had about a 40-minute game time. So, we'll see if they are able to kind of turn that around a bit. And I think they did somewhat this last week, with the back-to-back Callista picks. It showed like they were more focused on early game. I know the Golden Guardians game, they closed out pretty quickly. I can't remember exactly how long CLG one was, but I do recall that being a longer one. But I'm really excited for this one. I do kind of have a little bit of hesitancy in my mind, like Phreak said, because of that interview. I was going to reference the exact same thing. Yeah. TL always has who cares? We're already locked first. We didn't have to try, right? Like, and whether or not they do try, there's always going to kind of be that. And the first loss to TSM has the little, it was just York first pick. We trolled the draft, right? So I do think that there's kind of like a part of me that is thinking, well, you want to show for pride reasons that you can beat them, right? Because you did lose the first time around, and because you want to say, oh no, it was just that draft pick, right? Because if they come out and they slam TSM with a standard comp, then you're like, yep, it was just the York. That's the only reason they lost. Haha, we're still way better than you.
Yeah, that's why in the story meeting after the weekend where they lost to FlyQuest, I was like, okay, well, Team Liquid were trying something that is not their optimal strategy. And Mark was like, they've used all these picks before. But everybody knows if Team Liquid, and Doublelift even said it himself, like, was it
they
even
had no front line? Even earlier, they're going to lose team
even
fight.
Last year or something, he was like, we know our go-to strategy, right? It's me and Jensen on some late game carries, impact on front line.
Well, it's not him and Jensen.
Like impact on front line, like that's how they're going to win. You know what it looks like. It's the more standard type of composition.
It's 5v5. It's team fight 5v5 front to back. That's Team Liquid.
And even if they have used they're trying these, more spread out strategies, trying to split push, trying to do early pressure. And he's talking about in an interview as well that these are harder to execute.
Yep.
And I think they should be trying and to better themselves. You always want to try and keep on learning and perform on the harder to execute compositions.
Yep.
So I don't fault them for that, but we all know.
Yeah.
We all know what their go-to is.
But that being said, think back to MSI tiebreaker against Fnatic. We all know what that is, and then we're like, well, guys, don't worry. The Olay stuff happened. Who cares? They did great in the second half. He's gonna lock in a tank. Oh fuck, it's Jace, and then they lost. And and that was tiebreakers.
The most important game you've played all year.
Yes, the most important game they played all year. Against the bitter rivals, NAEU,
and they picked
battling
Jace.
out. They picked Jace, and they lost. Right, and so as much as I want to agree with you, they've shown that they're willing to play that stuff in the most important matches. So maybe that's Doubleist's view. Maybe I think for sure that's the community's view. That's my view. But maybe it's not the coach's view. Maybe it's not Impact's view, right? Because that's the thing that always is in the back of my head. Like, but what about that time that they didn't do it?
Yeah. What about the time they didn't know their own team? So, yeah, and that's the concern. Absolutely, is like Impact's a good player and a good teammate, but he is not the individual star that he was several years ago. He is not. He's a serviceable top laner, but that's where he is now. It feels like.
I disagree. I would say he is a star caliber player on tanks.
Okay.
And playing and not even. So I always say tanks. I should say champions that can play frontline, right? I think that
Aatrox.
he can. Yeah, I think Aatrox can work with that. I think his Sylas game was reasonable because you can build this Bruiser Sylas. Champions that essentially like create zones of power, right? That style of thing where you can withstand lane. You don't have to be lane dominant. The champions that have to smash lane and carry through the side lane or carry through these flanks or maybe individual 1v1 outplays, that doesn't feel like that's him as much. The Lissandra, while he had some bad plays, I still think like you saw how he can work very well in that. He had some great DPs. You can still play like Aftershock Lissandra and self-ult and Zonias and CC and do those things. So I think, at least for me, he can be that level of star on that. But like, I'm never going to have that same confidence if he's playing Akali or Jace or he picks the Fiora or even, like the Jax or whatever, where you have to slam and then get in the side lane and be able to push that advantage. Like, that's not him to me. But I think he can match up with the best in the world on tanks and on those frontliners.
Let's make predictions for this game then.
All right.
Because we have to take into account all of these things that we just discussed around it being the last game of the regular split and around the possibility here of Team Liquid, trying to play a harder to execute composition than their go-to. Given all this, what's it going to be?
Neither Team Liquid or TSM will have standing implication by this point in the time. TSM will be guaranteed exactly third.
You're assuming
C9 wins a game at all, they can't get that spot anymore. And assuming TSM wins a game at all, FlyQuest can't catch them. So they're exactly third, right? And Team Liquid is already exactly first. So like neither team needs it for standings. It's pride only. And considering these teams, I think, can expect to play themselves in the finals, I think this is a reasonable finals expectation. It's TSM's final. If they're trying, and Team Liquid have a decent shot of that being the final. I think they both hold back. They don't show optimal strategy. They already will wait to counter strat each other at some point down the line. And it's not going to be a fiesta, but neither is going to play optimal comp. And so it's just like, well, whose comp was more comfortable for them? And I don't know that answer.
Counterpoint.
What kind of prediction is that? Make your prediction.
Who wins?
I mean, just blankly Team Liquid.
Okay.
But it's like the most fraudulent.
So my counterpoint is that I think while I do agree that these teams are likely playing for finals, likely playing for, trying to face off against each other. And as you say, TSM is going to be on the Cloud9 side of the bracket in all likelihood. So they would have to beat them and then TL would be their final opponent. Yeah. I feel like, you're not going to scrim this team again until next year, basically, right? Like they're not going to scrim each other in playoffs. I think if they feel that they're the big threats, right? And like that often ends up happening. So this is kind of maybe your last chance to actually test a strategy to see, will this strategy actually work against them in a real game, right? Like, is this actually a good style to play against them if you're not fully sure? Because I think that pride does matter a lot to these teams. And I think proving that they are the best team in the league does still matter a lot to these teams. So I feel like had TL won the first time around, then I think it would be more of that throwaway game. But I feel like, and I could be wrong, because they had the Arc game, because they got hard flame for that game, because they already lost once to TSM, you don't want to go 0-2 to them. You don't want to throw that away. So I feel like TL is gonna be kind of coming out guns blazing and trying their best to win this one. I do still feel like I give the edge to TL because I think that TL is the more consistent, well-rounded team. I think that TSM, we all mentioned it, they've had some big mistakes, and I think that when TL is at their best and playing composition that suits them very well, where they can do late game team fighting, they are a team that doesn't allow you to make a lot of mistakes. If you do that one mistake that kind of puts you pretty far behind, TL has shown that they can snowball those games, that they can take the Baron, that they can close through team fighting or through just controlling the map. So that's kind of why I favor TL, simply because I think they make less mistakes. But TSM at their best certainly can win.
First of all, I think that Cloud9 are also such a big threat in playoffs that I feel like these teams will continue.
TL scrims TSM and semis.
I think they actually will scrim each other pretty intensively.
Or TL scrims CNN the whole time because I know
depends who you think is the biggest threat, right? Because a lot of players are now talking about TSM being the best team, and if you're TL and you're thinking maybe that's true, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, a lot of those players are Cloud9 players though. So they're trying to
maybe
look over here.
Yeah, look over these guys. Don't think about us too much.
But it is, it does feel like those three are definitely gonna be the ones that are circulating. All this debate around, I feel like this matchup for a prediction, all of us would greatly benefit from seeing the draft.
Of course.
That's but even more so than other ones, right? Because I realize
picking Jace or not.
If he picks Jace, I rescind my prediction.
But it's nerf Jace is not an excuse anymore.
Or Jace or Kennen or.
Oh, actually, no. In this one, he does. It's full Jace. Sorry.
Yeah, it is. This one definitely goes a long ways towards that. And
you're the one that called for the predictions. You're the hot
true, yeah.
Well, let me talk then. Also,
come on, Kobe.
Also, because both of you are predicting Team Liquid, I think it might seem a little bit too disingenuous to fans if we all Team Liquid for sure.
Last time I picked TL, I was right. I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's
the TLC 9 game.
Last time I picked against Team Liquid, I was wrong. I picked Cloud9.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to pick against Team Liquid again, though.
Okay.
And again, the draft is going to play a huge part in it. The only other thing I'm worried about are those individual mistakes, because I do have confidence that TSM are going to, play this, go for early game, try and force things around the bottom side of the map with Dragon, get Broken Blade in a 1v1 with Impact. They want that isolation, and I think that is a good isolation to have. But and those mistakes, as we said, have come through. So maybe the consistency might not be there. Even given that, though, I do feel like Team Liquid are still, even though you mentioned the pride thing, they lost last time to TSM. They didn't really have a problem with, trying to pull a little bit harder to execute something against them last time. So I think they'll do it again.
Cool.
All right. Well, it's going to be a good one. You guys aren't going to want to miss that. The second last game of the regular season. It's going to be on Sunday. So make sure you tune in for it. It's going to be a banger either way. And then we got to talk about the final two spots here for playoffs that everyone is kind of competing for. So TSM, Cloud9, TL all locked. FlyQuest as well. There's two more spots, and there are essentially 5 teams that are kind of battling for it. Golden Guardians, CLG, Echo Fox, Optic, and Clutch. Golden Guardians sitting at 7 and 9, Clutch at 5 and 11. The other 3 are all 6 and 10.
Yeah. So, things to point out, right? 100 Thieves are obviously out. Clutch Gaming are a game behind and still have an absurdly hard schedule. It's just a non-starter. I consider Clutch out of the race entirely.
TSM Cloud9 is their schedule.
Yeah, it's just they're not going to win those. And even if they 2-0, they still need help.
Yep.
Right? So, I just to me, it's like a 0.1% chance. I'm not going to consider it. So it's
you're cutting them off the clump.
It's right. So it's 4 teams fighting for 2 spots, which is really exciting. Golden Guardian, CLG, Echo Fox, Optic, as you said. I have everyone's head-to-heads and their schedules coming up in front of here. And even though I'm pretty high on Golden Guardians, I can easily see them going 0-2. It's Optic and FlyQuest. Optic look pretty decent. FlyQuest are 2 games above them, so you kind of expect to lose there. And going 0-2, Golden Guardians being at 7 and 11, keep in mind that both CLG and Optic, I believe, have 100 Thieves in their upgrading opponent. So Optic gets to win against 100 Thieves, and they place Golden Guardians. Okay, now you're above them. CLG gets to get their free win over 100 Thieves as well, and if they can beat Echo Fox, they're also 2-0. And now Golden Guardians are out.
Golden Guardians. So to me, Golden Guardians, you're looking directly at them versus Optic. They are already 1-0 versus Optic. So even if Optic win that game,
But Optic's gonna 2-0 if they win because they've 100 Thieves their last opponent, right? So it's like,
so you can't just fully write that off.
No, I know, but I guess what I'm saying is Golden Guardians, though they're in 5th, it is very easy to lose their spot because a 0-2 is realistic for them, and a 2-0 for CLG and Optic is realistic for them. For both those teams, and so it's like,
but why is it more realistic that you know what I mean? Like, so I think Golden Guardians over the course of the split, when you discount the first 2 weeks where they start 0-4 or whatever, right? I think they have actually just looked better than Optic and better than FlyQuest, maybe even, right? Or that is more debatable, but like. I think they have looked like a solid team, so I'm just questioning why does the 6 and 10 Optic like clearly have the advantage and clearly they can 2-0 when they have to play against Golden Guardians, who is 7 and 5 in their last number of weeks.
And I guess I'll rephrase, or I should be more clear. Like, I only mean it's realistic, as in like, don't be surprised if Golden Guardians loses the spot. I think they can do it. I don't think they are worse than either team definitively, but though they're above the clump, I can see it just being a catastrophe at the very end. I think they are very good. I think their players are playing well. I think they've come across a style that works for them, playing late game team fight for bot lane and mid lane, and just like making sure you don't throw everything away from there, giving Ole something like Tom Kent, she's a bit safer. Like, that's all really positive.
Yeah. I've noticed too that a lot of the teams, like the further towards the bottom that you go, the more the teams are opting into, let's just try and pit more late game and maybe we'll outscale them, right? So I don't know if they'll get pushed in that way. FlyQuest, I think, definitely will. And I think that the FlyQuest being in their upcoming games is going to be difficult. But I would probably choose, if I had to choose right now, Golden Guardians and CLG to be the two that did get out. A lot hinges, obviously, on the head-to-head of Optic versus Golden Guardians. I think that is definitely going to be a close one, especially with Optic still switching so many parts out, Medius and Dardoch, and they still have the possibility of switching bottom lane as well.
And Golden Guardians are already 2-0 on CLG, so if Golden Guardians do win that game over Optic, they're 2 over Optic, 2 over CLG. Only Echo Fox can be 1-1 with them, so they've got to somehow keep pace.
And Echo Fox have Team Liquid, which, if you're talking about most guaranteed losses, most guaranteed wins, I feel like that one is super rough.
Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say that one is super rough, but I do feel like, not that I would favor them, but I feel like there's more of a chance with them playing, the super late game style kind of thing, right? If they do go for, okay, we're going just like Azir and Jinx and all this stuff, maybe you can get that sort of a win. But the two really big games, obviously you mentioned Optic, GGS, but CLG also play Echo Fox, and those are all teams that are really battling it out. I think those two games are going to decide most of the weekend, because the winners of those are going to put themselves at such a nice advantage, since you're knocking down your competitor, moving one rung up in the ladder. Certainly are expecting Clutch to just be out of there based on strength of schedule, but for Echo Fox, if they lose to TL and they beat CLG, there's still maybe some hope. But Golden Guardians, I certainly think, have the edge, because I think that both of those games that they are playing are winnable, and they're starting one game up, and they're already, head to head over CLG and one over Optic, right? Like, they are just in the best position, and I think that their chances are very comparable with everyone else in this last weekend. So
their odds are high. Yeah, their odds are high. I guess I'm just trying to just really instill that, like, though they're a game up, these are both losable games, and a 0-2 will probably kick you out if that does happen. But yeah, really tight. I agree. Golden Guardians are the front runners there. I probably put CLG as next up, I guess. It's tough. CLG and Optic both have like similarly difficult schedules. They both have 100 Thieves. CLG plays Fox. Optic plays Guardians. Those are, with how well Echo Fox played last week, those are of similar difficulty. Right? They beat C9 more or less straight up. Like, that was just, Rush is back on form. They had a 2-0 week. Like, they suddenly felt confident as well. Like,
I can tell with your tone of voice, though, you're figuring this out as you're saying it.
I mean, like as we're getting ready to start this, I wrote down everyone's schedule and all their head-to-heads, and I'm like, I actually don't know which of the four I pick. Like, all of them could easily do it. All of them could fail to do it. Echo Fox, with how they played last week, could 2-0 a Team Liquid CLG match, especially when TL aren't taking the games quite as seriously, when they don't want to show playoff strats. That could be a 2-0. CLG, 100 Thieves, and Echo Fox, of course that could be a 2-0.
I feel like Team Liquid I don't feel like they care about showing you like playoff.
I mean, they'll still play
whatever,
well,
right? Yeah.
It's just they're just slightly more mortal. Like, if you asked me about this match last week, I'd be like 0%.
Yeah, I would say, or my way to phrase it might be that Team Liquid are going to draft more hard to execute comps.
Yes,
how I feel.
Yes, there'll be more beats.
It's just the double of thing from the interview, because he said we're not going to show our optimal playoff strats.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're like, I'm pretty sure I know what that auto playoff is.
Yeah.
So,
and there's been Nautilus and Ornn buffs recently, so
yeah. The Echo Fox, I think, is made much more interesting by their performance last week. You know, especially the C9 win is a big win for them, right? You know, and that gives you that kind of little kernel of hope that they could maybe do the same thing against TL.
Yeah.
And especially because they did it, it didn't just feel like a completely random win. It felt like, okay, you actually changed the strategy that you're employing, right? Like they did full late game. They did Jinx, Azir, Vladimir with Braum, J4 frontline. Like, that just seemed like, holy crap, that's unlosable 5v5 late game if you can make the other team take 5v5. So, you know, if you can do that sort of strategy, if TL drafts for team fight and you draft for team fight but better and they can't close out the game, well then hey, maybe it doesn't matter if you're a worse team. Obviously that's kind of, you know, stretching it a little bit. You're assuming that they can't get outplayed early and whatnot, but I do think it's going to be a really exciting race, and I think that there's potential for really anyone except Clutch. That just seems way too doomed. Being down a game plus impossible strength of schedule is like, oh god, okay, you're out of there.
Give it to me in doctor terms. I'm already imagining another Marcus Vale doctor.
This is no longer the doctor. This is at the morgue. Clutch is already dead. It's the end of the doctor segment.
You got the 100 Thieves line in this drawer, and then you pull out the next drawer, and you're like,
one week to live.
We got a fresh one that showed up.
Yep.
Yeah, but it should be very exciting. I think that could go really a lot of different ways, but I am predicting Golden Guardians for sure. And then the second one, I really think I'm kind of struggling with. But all
right, what are you gonna go with? I said CLG.
Yeah, you gotta make predictions at some point.
Phreak also said CLG.
Yeah, I think CLG just.
Phreak said he didn't know what he's gonna choose.
CLG just have an easier schedule, right? If Echo Fox had 100 Thieves instead of TL, I think I would actually predict Echo Fox, because I think they had a really good last weekend and felt like they were building on something there. But I just think that because they are tied and they have TL, which I'm assuming is a loss, I think that CLG gets the last spot.
So you think Echo Fox is the best of CLG and Optic and them?
I think so, but and maybe I'm wrong, because the thing is, so assuming CLG beats 100 Thieves and Echo Fox loses to Liquid, then the game between them is what decides that last spot.
So I think if Fox beats CLG and like everything goes to expectations,
I'm actually going to change. I'm change Echo Fox then.
Another three-way tie, actually.
Okay.
Because if Fox beats CLG, loses to TL, CLG beats 100 Thieves, loses to Fox, as we already mentioned, and Optic loses to Golden Guardians and beats 100 Thieves, they're all 1-1 with each other, unless I'm misrepresenting any of my numbers, but it looks like this is what's happening.
Predict an Echo Fox.
And then they're all in a three-way tie again.
There you go.
So it just like, even if it plays according to standings, there's a three-way tie, and then the best team comes out ahead. And so if you say it's Fox, then it's Fox.
I'm looking forward to tiebreakers too.
Yeah,
it seems really likely.
I think it is Echo Fox then. I actually was pretty impressed by the last weekend, and despite the fact that they have had a pretty rough run of it, Phoenix, I think, has been one of the really, really impressive mid laners in the league. Even in their losses, I've been pleasantly surprised by how he's been playing.
And the tiebreakers, if there's not too many of them, will be played on Sunday with Russian. You have a trump card.
Oh,
Rush is back. Sunday immunity will be reinstated. Yeah,
except for the time it wasn't.
You got to keep the story going.
That's right. You're right.
And also not for playoffs. And also maybe not another league. And all those times he was on the bench and his team was getting slammed. But besides that,
he was on the bench.
The aura should still be there, okay?
The aura.
But he had to go on the bench to regenerate the aura. You know, a war down.
After a war down.
That's why they had the loss.
The aura's looking a little bit busted. It's all scuffed up.
He's taking some hits. He was like, I need a break, guys.
This is the most useless analysis of all time.
He went to the extreme gravity training.
Yeah, it was a fluke week for Echo Fox, and it's like back down to the dumpster. But yeah, I guess I will lean Echo Fox with Golden Guardians. But honestly, like I wouldn't be shocked.
Ooh, I've convinced you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is probably the odd favorite.
You're not
analysis
different.
worked.
You're not different. I'm different now.
All right, great.
Oh, damn it.
You made me.
Yeah, you're right.
Now you're a sheep.
Oh, no. Well, at least I'm like at the head of the herd, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm
you're
like
still a sheep.
I'm like a jack sheep.
You're
like,
okay.
I'm like a really cool sheep.
You convinced him.
You're getting sheared first.
Yeah, but I have the highest quality fleece.
Okay, great.
Yours is all scuffed up. You just follow wherever the other sheep go.
Listen here, sheep. It is time for Twitter questions. We got one from Enzo. Enzo Nev Lowell. Do you think that properly executed? I like that, because after you put properly executed before, you know, is this optimal?
The question.
Then you're like, hell yeah, perfectly execute this. 131 is the optimal style of League of Legends on red side. because you can get counterpick for your split pusher. Do you think that steady reduction in vision over the last 1.5 years, i.e. trinket cooldown, trackers, knife, sightstone, is the reason that we are seeing it less?
So I actually think less vision is less good for split push because it's hard to get your jungler can't walk over Tracker's Knife and give your Fiora 2 wards, then go back while your support is still controlling Baron. I think you are more teamfight focused in a lower vision game state. But the reason we're seeing so many side lane split pushers is we're mandatory tank supports right now, at least as far as pros are concerned. And power level seems to be in a good spot where like Jace is really good every game. Yorick is now in the meta. Like Conqueror kind of just made Aurelia and Akali and whatnot more popular. So there's just a lot of good fighter champions out there that people just want to play.
For me, it does have to do with the champion state right now in conjunction with lane bullies are rewarded more than ever because of turret plates.
Yes.
So you pick a split pusher that's going to be a great 1v1 artist. They have a strong lane phase early on. Then you're set up to be able to snowball that a little bit more. That being said, there are some counterintuitive points, right? Dragons are more powerful. So neutral objectives are a very big point that teamfight teams can use to draw you to. I actually just think that there are more rewards on the map right now. So that's why the properly executed at the beginning of this question is so important. Mistakes are more heavily punished now than previously because there are more rewards on the map for you to take after you punish a mistake.
So are you guys saying it's optimal or not?
1-3-1?
Yeah.
I would play that every single time if it's properly executed.
Yeah.
I think it's entirely based on comp. Like you get down to your last pick, you're like, okay, I see their champions, I see our R4. Like there are going to be spots where you're like, yes, Fiora's the best pick here, Yasuo's the best pick here, Akali's the best pick here, and there's going to be games where you're like,
yeah, we're saying
this is perfect for Ornn.
And we're saying give you the comp. Like
yeah.
Do you think it's optimal to do the 1-3-1 versus the super hard engage? Like if you see an enemy team, and you're like, okay, well, I know exactly what they're going to try and do and force on this.
I mean, I'm saying that there's states where 1-3-1 is optimal, and there's states where teamfight is optimal. Like you started drafting, and like, okay, based on what you showed here, I pick this. Based on what you showed there, I pick that. We pick. Okay, top lane's last. Okay, Fiora wins this game or Ornn wins this game is always true. Like it's based on what you're playing, what we're playing.
Yeah. So it's not always optimal.
I don't think it can be
based on situation.
I think it's not so much better than the other options. That there are not times where team fight comp is the best comp.
Yeah. So I'm kind of the opinion that when we are using the properly executed, that 1-3-1 is the optimal style because we're giving that caveat. The reason I don't think in reality it is often the optimal style is because I believe that a properly executed, like the actual perfect 1-3-1 is so much harder to play out than it is to play a team fight comp, because not only are you going to be lacking a lot of the vision that you used to have in the past that made it more easy, right? Like it's a nonstop push and pull. You have to be shoving those waves, winning the one-on-ones. You know, you're never going to have perfect information of where everyone is. So you have to be making the right decisions at all times where it's like, okay, no, this is the moment where I actually do try to dive him, you know, even if the jungler could be there, and always making those appropriate decisions, I think is so incredibly hard. And that's why I think it is almost impossible to like perfectly execute the 1-3-1. But in the situation where you can do that, I think it's almost unbeatable because you have assuming these two winning side lanes that can be drawing more pressure than can be answered, and you're always creating these uneven situations where it's like, oh well, there's two here now, you guys get the advantage there. Oh well, there's three here now you take that turret, right?
Yeah.
But in reality, often someone just gets picked, or the side lane is not getting enough pressure and not actually getting objectives because they're scared of where everyone is. And that's why teamfight comps are easier to execute and more highly recommended usually.
Yeah, the reason why I would contest your answer is because I'm trying to take it to the most extreme. Okay. And I feel like there is more outplay potential on the side of the 1-3-1. That potential is very rarely 100% utilized.
Sure. Yeah.
But if we're taking it to the most extreme...
Right. And you're assuming like both teams are playing close optimal as they can, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, like any comp optimally always wins because you're playing optimally. But, the best blue side team in the world plays a team fight comp. The best red side team in the world plays a 1-3-1 comp, and you're like, red wins.
Yeah. And I think it is good for the game if we're like, if there is a single optimal play style, which we don't want there to be, right? You don't want there to settle on it. At least it's the most difficult to execute, right? Like, all right.
Okay, Ardent Sensor meta, let's go.
Okay.
Well, and it's true. Like,
but correct.
But correct.
I think it's basically the optimal style, but it's just so damn hard that it's like one of those things, right? You know, like Xerath or whatever, right? Is Xerath not just the best champion in the whole game by far if you never miss a skill shot ever? Right? Like if you hit like or Vel'Koz or whatever, like you hit every single ability the whole game, always. You've never missed one in your life. Like that champion is so absurdly broken. It like you get to late game and you hit all 5 of your orbs, you just kill their AD carry from full every time.
Yeah.
It's like but you can't do that. No one can do that, so it doesn't matter.
And you have to take into account, like, if I'm putting the peak Xerath play versus peak like a Kali play or something like that, with something that has the mobility to, even at peak Xerath play, if I cast my spell, you're directly on the center. Because of your champion kit, your peak play is that you can dodge it.
Yeah, but I'm just saying in the world in which you can't, right? Like
we're pitting Neo versus Neo.
Yeah.
Of course. Then things change. But my point is just like there's lots of stuff in the game that is insanely broken if you could do it, but you can't do it, so it doesn't matter.
Yep.
Anyway, we got another question here from T-Bird USA. Thank you for that last question, by the way. Started an interesting discussion. T-Bird USA says, on the Dive Lol, there was a discussion about Reddit and how it handles the opinions of LCS players and how players are affected by it. My question is, why do players and analysts give Reddit analysis, whether legit or vile, so much power?
I think it's just it's very human to want to be part of a community. And like, hey, I talk with you guys and, I talk with my friends about the game and whatnot. But sometimes like I just want to, talk about League some more, but none of my friends are on. So I guess I'll read what Reddit's saying. And they're saying this thing. And it's like, even if you don't think they're smart, you're still seeing those words, right? Like it can't not affect you to some degree, I feel like.
So one of the biggest things to me that I think that maybe people will forget is that we are also just individual gamers, and we are individual fans. We are a lot of us Redditors, Twitter users as well. So we don't really see ourselves, as this like up and apart, like we're something separate.
Phreak does now since he did Simpsons.
Well, that's true. Yeah, now I have an IMDb and everything. So.
Also,
but the rest of us,
but
the rest of you are
Phreak is. But I think that's where it comes from a lot, because we're still so like esports is still so new. Like we talked about all of our origins. We have all started when it was very much still a fringe of society, and kind of work through even getting accepted and getting to this point. And it's still weird for us when people come up, outside.
They pay you to play video games,
or even like at a restaurant. There was this girl came up. She had a mouse pad for some reason while she was at a pizza place. She was like, "I saw my mouse pad." I was like, "Okay, but why did you bring your mouse pad to this?"
She's gaming on the go, place? Kobe.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that also plays a part of it, right? We are also just fans ourselves, and a lot of it does come with that, so we relate to it. That being said, I think even Aframu has had some good recent commentary on this, where a lot of it does come with the job, and you do need to build in that defense and have this certain amount of acceptance for I need to walk away right now, or like you're saying, even though you see this, you have to have ways with dealing with that, because that is part of the territory. And even though we think of ourselves in this way, it's that's something that you do have to deal with.
Golden Glue, I remember he responded to, I don't know if it was this guy's tweet or another tweet of the same line, because we had talked about it when he was on the show last week.
Great guest, by the way.
He was fantastic. And he said, essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but we have to care because like fans matter to the orgs, fans matter to our bosses. Like there is no LCS if none of the fans want to watch. Cloud9, guess what? These guys don't make their money and have a pro team if no one cares to watch their games and no one cares to interact with them. So you kind of have to care as part of your job as well. But I mean, it's also just a natural thing, right? Like I would say my best and worst experiences are fan experiences, because it's really fun for me to be part of the community and interact with fans and chat with people and meet these people who like watching the dive or like the cast or do whatever. But at the same time, you can't have that. Like if you want to have these positive experiences, that means opening yourself up to the community and reading Twitter replies and reading Reddit and reading these things. And that is some of the best stuff, but you're also going to get those things where it is then the very negative experiences. And at the end of the day, we're all just humans, right?
Yep.
I've been doing esports since like 2007, so I've built up a fair tolerance to this, right, of the ups and downs. But I mean, you finish the cast, it was an exciting game. You're like, wonder what Reddit has to say, right? you go open the post game thread, and it's like, well, Azale should get fired and then go die. Okay,
great.
then,
there we are.
Or whatever, right? And so it's like, that's still gonna not feel good, no matter how many times you've seen mean things said, or like how much of a tolerance you have. It's not gonna be like, this is great, I love that. What a swell guy. So it's just the ups and downs. I think it comes with the job. A big part of being a caster is being in touch with the community and having people be excited about the LCS, and that entails interacting with the fans and knowing what the fans are saying. And also, you do get some really good feedback and comments from Reddit.
Yeah.
That is the other part that sometimes gets glossed over.
Yeah, I wouldn't give it up for anything, even though it is very stressful. Like I said, we consider ourselves part of the community, and that has been something that's core to who I am. So it's not something that we can just kind of cut out.
And also to esports, I think that's one of the coolest things about esports is how accessible pros are and personalities are, right? Like, go try to talk to LeBron. Like, when are you going to be able to talk to LeBron James or whatever, right? But you could go on Bjergsen's stream and like send him a donation and be like, hey, Bjergsen, I thought you did really well last week. And it'd be like, thanks, Jimmy22. Appreciate that. I tried my best.
Yep.
And
thank you at Riot Phreak.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of which, actually, not to cut you off, but Kobe started it. After
I did that.
After I feel guilty after fishing for compliments last week on the dive, a whole bunch of people went and tweeted me. It was like, Phreak, I thought you were amazing the whole time. Thanks so much. And it was like incredible, like how much like support there was. As you mentioned, take the good with the bad. Like, I can't ignore negative comments, but like only take the good ones. It's like, I have to say all comments are fraudulent. So a lot of people were really positive. That was super awesome to hear or read, I guess, more literally. But yeah, the community's freaking awesome. And by and large, people are absolutely amazing. And like, I like talking and hearing what you have to say because most of them are positive and have cool things to say.
Yeah. And the last thing I will say on it is because of some of the stress of this, and it is a real stress for a lot of people, especially like, we are all lucky enough to have a lot of people who like our work and support our work. And I think we're in a better position than many other people in the community are with that, where some people get like 90-10 hate to love type thing. And that's why we're seeing now some players and some people are in the community, and I've talked to a lot of people who are doing this now, they have someone else run their social media, right? And that is a situation where it's like, they're not going to announce that they're having a firm do it, but people do it for their mental health because it can be very stressful to deal with that, especially when people are the target of a lot of kind of anger and vitriol from the community. So, that is maybe the future that exists if there is like too much of the negative for some people. But I certainly want to stay involved in the community as long as I can.
All right, last one. David Peterly, he is a regular on the dive.
And he accused us of not getting his questions because we couldn't say his name, so hopefully we said it right.
You didn't.
That's how I say it every time.
It's David.
I'm going to keep saying it that way. Are dynasties important in esports?
Yes.
Are they healthy for the competitive
question,
scene? And at what point does a dynasty overstay its welcome? Example, feels like SKT fell just at the right time to renew the global competitive scene.
That's true.
Phreak is of the opinion that yes, they are very important.
Yeah. And it depends on how long you're willing to watch the esport, because TSM made finals every year forever up until last year where they didn't. Like that's a dynasty where they every time made Worlds, every time made NA finals, half the time they won the thing. It was like, okay, we get it, TSM's the best. But they still have the most, even after the last year, they didn't do so well, they still have the most fans. So like they managed to get a lot of people to care about them more than anyone else. People tune in for TSM games. It's strictly been a positive as far as I can tell.
For me, I definitely felt the negative effects. I do think that they are important, and I like, having the Team Liquid or Patriots or whatever to look at like, all right, let's take down these guys. Because I'm always the one, I always side with the underdogs.
Sure.
I want to see upsets.
Me too.
And in order to have upsets, you have to have, the king at the top or the dynasty. However, and specifically with the SKT one, I definitely at the last year, whatever year that was, they all
after the third win,
they've all blend together. I was starting to feel like,
all right, we get it.
It's SKT and everyone else.
And I was really getting tired of it, and especially because it also wasn't just Korea. Or I mean, it just wasn't SKT. There was always a couple more, extra Korean teams that were, stacked right behind him, and you just felt like, oh my goodness, like if you get to a question where you're thinking, what is the point now? Then I'm like, all right, this dynasty is overstayed its welcome. The first couple of years is cool, right? Because you're like, oh my God, who's going to defeat the defending champions? And then the third time, like, oh my God, are they really that dominant? They're going to do it again? Then the next one, you're just like, I really can't take any more of this. Sure. And it gets, like I said, you need to have that element of hope, right?
What was really nice about Worlds last year is
exactly
Korea fell at top 8.
That's why I was freaking out when
it was a big deal.
Korea is falling. We're getting all these upsets, and North America's getting further than they ever gone before. Europe got finals. It was actually insane, and I had so much built up emotions that the last year was like a very cathartic release of like,
Kobe's basically a robot. He doesn't really feel anything.
He doesn't care about anything.
Yeah, it comes through on his cast as well. Very monotone. It's very
obvious.
Guy. Yeah,
not an excitable cast in the least.
For me, it's just, is the result in question, right? So when it comes to the point of like, so I think dynasties are important. I think it builds story, it builds history. I think it builds excitement, and I think that over the longevity of a sport, when you want this sport that the League of Legends is to last decades, you want those dynasties, you want that history. Because I think that, so I've cast a lot of games, and this is going to come off like flame and whatever, but like one of the things that I had trouble with when I was casting Hearthstone is that because there was less consistency among pros, it's harder to show, hey, this proves that you're the best when you win, right? In League of Legends, you cannot argue that SKT was not the best team, right? These were actually the best in the whole world at this game. It's extremely skill-based, and here's your proof. They have like a 78% win rate at Worlds, and this guy always wins every single time, right?
Faker's 3 world titles. He's just the best.
Exactly, right? So like that is one of the things that I think is really cool, and I really love about League is that you can't debate the skill in the game because these players have been able to show consistency. And to me, that is always the measure of a sport, is if you can really prove that it is extremely skill-based, it's not luck, that is it, right? Like showing that you can win for many years in a row, consistently the best, that proves that there is skill in the game. And when the dynasties overstay their welcome, I just think when the result is no longer in question, right? If it ever gets to a point where it's like, yeah, well, TSM is going to win the finals, so who cares, right? Like, if you hit that point that they're so dominant that they win every time, that it's never even close, then I think it's boring, right? As long as the result is in question, as long as it's like, well, TL could probably still beat them, though, or C9 could probably still beat them, or what if they just mess up one time, then they're going to lose, right? Then it's still exciting, and I think we have never hit at least the point for me, besides maybe just like Korea as a whole.
Yeah, that's the thing, because it was like Korea and Samsung trading off.
Yeah.
And I felt like,
so Korea as a whole started feeling like when you hit the best of 5s, of course, right? They're gonna win, and I think that's why it felt so refreshing. So that's
All right, that is going to do it for this episode of The Dive. We are coming up on our last week of the LCS, so make sure that you turn in this weekend and see who are going to be the last teams in playoffs. Are we correct in our predictions?
It's going to be clutch out of nowhere to be like, that was the most absurd result. But
and we also have the marquee matchup, TSM versus Team Liquid, to look forward to.
Let's go.
So tune in a half hour early for cooldown as well. Countdown.
And stay half an hour late.
I did the quick shot.
I did it during the intro last week, actually. I just called it welcome to cooldown. Like already.
Yeah.
The show hasn't even begun yet.
But Saturday is 1:30, Sunday is 11:30, and we'll see you there.